Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. This video is all about container gardening. We're going to go over the sizes of containers and really matching plants to the right size container. You have to imagine a plant when it's large, middle of July, full summer sun, large plant, just sucking the water and life out of that soil. So you really do have to match the plant to the container size. You want to focus on tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, squash, zucchini, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about sweet potatoes. But let's get started with matching the plants to the size of the container. Let's first go with container size. This is a 20-gallon fabric pot. I sell these at my seed and garden shop. 20 gallons is about 76 liters. Perfect real quick for zucchini, squash, indeterminate tomato plant. You could put like 3 or 4 pepper plants in there actually. Cucumbers if I didn't mention that. The key is really thinking about the size of the plant come midsummer. How big is the plant going to be? How much room does it have for the roots, and how quickly is it going to take the fertilizer and water out of the soil? So for those plants, you definitely want a 20-gallon. You could plant in smaller containers. I've done it before, but it's a lot more watering and a lot more feeding. Coming over here, that is a 10-gallon container. That's about, what would that be, 38 liters. Perfect for a couple pepper plants. A determinate variety tomato, one that doesn't get to full size. I've grown tomatoes before in 5 gallons and 10-gallon containers, and it's possible. They're a little bit smaller, but it's a lot of work. And then right in here is a 4-gallon, even though it's called a 5-gallon sometimes when you buy them. It's a number 5 fabric pot. About 4 and, I don't know, say 4.5 gallons of soil. That's about what, 18 liters or something like that. In these smaller pots, 1 pepper plant will do really well in there. These are the general sizes I recommend for your container garden. We'll call that a 5-gallon, even though it's a little bit less. 10-gallon, and then we have a 20-gallon. I also sell 50-gallon root pouches at my shop. I will show you some plants that are already growing in these containers, but let's talk about setting up the soil. The fabric pots themselves are really inexpensive. What can be expensive is filling the containers with soil. Doesn't matter what kind of container you buy. I have plenty of videos on buying bagged products at the big box stores. I will link them in the video description. Please watch them. They'll educate you on how not to get ripped off and how not to spend a lot of money. To keep it simple, if you don't have access to your own compost, soil, you don't want to make your potting mix, any bagged potting mix or container mix will work. You just want to make sure that mix that you're buying doesn't contain a lot of shredded wood. Again, check out the video in the video description. But any potting mix will work. What we're going to do today, and it doesn't matter what kind of soil you get into your containers, I'm going to show you how to set it up with the dry organic fertilizer, and we'll talk about the water-soluble fertilizing. We'll also talk about trellising too. How do you maintain like vine crops, like cucumbers? You can even do like bush melons in these 20-gallon containers. But it's really important to set these up with the right amount of fertilizer and keep them fed with water-soluble. That's how your plants are going to thrive. The damage is done growing in containers when we just don't water them enough. And if the root systems dry out once completely, it really damages the plant. So I'll be going over that. I'll also link in the video description how I make my own potting mix. You save a ton of money that way. The short version is I take peat moss, 50% peat moss, 50% earth from around my garden area, mix it together. That makes a fine container mix. That's going to work. The peat moss holds water, the earth provides nutrients and other things your plant needs. Just creates a nice growing medium. Sometimes I take that base of 50% peat, 50% earth, and then I'll add in compost depending on what I have on hand. Next is really setting this up with the dry organic granular fertilizers. And that can be really confusing. I buy mine on sale. Like this whole bag I got for $4 years ago during January because stuff goes on sale here in Maryland. And it's just a dry fertilizer, organic. All the same stuff is basically in any of these bagged fertilizers that you buy. You don't want to overpay. I recommend paying well below $2 a pound, but pick one that just has N, P, and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium represented. In a 20-gallon container, I fill it halfway first, and then I throw in 1 or 2 handfuls of the organic granular in the bottom and mix it through. Organic granular is a slow release fertilizer. and it's going to feed your plants over time. The microbes, soil biology have to break it down. Then I fill the container up to the top, leaving a gap here for some shredded hardwood. We're going to mulch this to keep the moisture in. So again, you know, if you have a really big hand, maybe one. If you have a small hand, maybe two. And what you're going to do is just mix the organic granular through. Try and get down, you know, down halfway, but as long as you're getting 4 inches deep, 6 inches deep, mixing it through so that root systems aren't sitting on the fertilizer. That's like 10 to 20 centimeters, something like that. That's set up nicely with the organic fertilizer, the dry fertilizer. That's going to feed slowly over time. After we plant or put in seeds, we're going to hit it with the water-soluble fertilizer. For the 10-gallon container, fill it halfway, just about 1 handful in the bottom, just about 1 handful in the top, mix it through. In this 4 or 5 gallon container, 1 handful in the top, and it's easy to reach down and mix it through. That will set up the planting, or that will set up the container with your planting medium, and this is going to be great. You know, no worries using the bag stuff. If you want to make it, go ahead. All right, the next step is planting. This is a 20-gallon fabric container. It looks a little bit smaller because it's a little bit sunken into the mulch, and over time, this has been here for, I don't know, a good 4 years. So as I put down more mulch, I'm coming up the sides, which is great because that's going to keep moisture in the bottom, and it helps, you know, sometimes with the fabric pots, water kind of wicks out to the side and it dries a little bit more quickly. But generally speaking, I don't really have a problem with them. This is a indeterminate variety tomato. Please subscribe and follow me. I'll be showing you how I prune and take care of my tomato plants over the next week or two. I'll be doing videos. Nice simple trellis right down the middle, and I pushed that in so that it actually did puncture the bottom of the root pouch, goes into the earth. That's going to be nice and solid. Around the outside, I have some garlic growing, but the 20 gallons is perfect for that indeterminate tomato. Again, you could do a squash, zucchini, a bush-type cucumber, cantaloupe, melon. You could go, I mean, you could grow a full vining melon or cucumber if you want, but it's just a lot to contain. So the bush varieties are somewhere in between is better. And just to show you, this is what the 20-gallon looks like when it's sitting on top of the earth on the shredded hardwood. Buzzing through here, this is a 22-gallon container. If you want to use something like this, I get these at the big box stores by the trash cans, and they're really used for like barbecues, and you just put drinks and stuff in there. But it's a nice little utility tub. And in there I have a giant marigold, parsley, cilantro, dill. So again, 20 gallons is the size that I recommend for your tomato plants. Spinning over here, we got another 20-gallon tomato plant in there. This is just that 4 or 5 gallon container. It's called a number 5, so I sometimes just misspeak, but it's not quite 5 gallons. But that's potatoes and garlic in there. Now that the potatoes are large, I have to keep up on the watering, but I'm gonna get nice potatoes out of just a 5-gallon container, and I just put in 1 potato into that root pouch. And then real quick, we've got some 10 gallons in there. There's a pepper plant, and you can see that the potatoes are starting to kind of cover up stuff. And in here are 10 gallons, and these are all peas that I started growing obviously earlier in the spring. They're doing really well in there. So the 5s, the 10s, and the 20s are really versatile for growing a lot of different plants. We added in the organic granular, so the soil here is set up for cucumbers, squash, or zucchini, and I do recommend planting by seeds. Like, this is a really nice, healthy transplant that I grew. But if you go to the big box stores, you could be paying $4 or $5 for a transplant. Get a $2 pack of seeds. Seeds last for years, and these germinate really quickly. They'll germinate in about 5 days. So take your squash, zucchini, cucumber, put in 2 or 3 seeds, and you're just gonna press them down 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep. I wanna pull those out because I don't wanna grow those in there. You wanna put in 2 seeds or 3 seeds because you don't wanna be waiting around for 1 seed to germinate that's not gonna germinate. If they all come up, you're gonna thin these down to a single plant, something like that. If I were to plant that zucchini in there, I'm just digging the hole, and I don't know if this will pop out easily or not. Let's see. And I'm just gonna plant it right to where my finger is, depth-wise, and then water it in with a water-soluble fertilizer. And it would go in something just like that. But what I want to plant in here today, because I have zucchini, squash, cucumbers growing in other places, are little cucamelons, these little tiny cucumbers. They're melons basically. And the seeds are really small. So what I want to do for small seeds is firm the base down, and then I'm just going to do not quite half an inch, 1.25 centimeters, and then I'll drop one right into there, two, and because of how this vine grows, maybe I'll keep two of them, and then once they're planted, just cover it over. These are going to get in watered in with a water-soluble fertilizer. I'll try and talk about water frequency and feeding frequency. It varies depending on the rain, size of the plants, but I'll give you some instructions so that your plants do well over the season. In the 10-gallon container, you could grow a determinate variety tomato. They get to a set height, flower, set fruit, not like the indeterminates, which should be in the 20 gallons, just continue to grow through the season. So in 10 gallons, you can actually put in, these are my poblano peppers, that's what's going to go in there. You could put in 2 poblano peppers or 3. The more plants you put in, the more often you're going to have to water. But in this space, because the sun actually bakes in this area, I'm just going to put in 2 plants. And to do that, simple hole, drop it in, cover it over, press it in. And that's how I would plant 2 pepper plants in there. This is a sweet potato vine. And in 10 gallons, perfect for 1 plant. The root systems are going to develop really nice sweet potatoes. You don't want to overdo this. You could, again, if you want to, squeeze in 2 plants, but you're going to have to water and feed them more. You really have to keep the sweet potatoes fed. You're going to want something for it to trellis on. The vine will come out and sprawl. You know, it's really up to you, but you can definitely grow sweet potatoes in these 10-gallon containers. You could also, if you have limited space, bush variety cucumbers, bush variety cantaloupe, watermelons, the really bush varieties. You want to get the ones that really put out short vines, maybe 2 feet, 3 feet, something like that. You could do in a 10-gallon, but it would be only 1 plant per. In these 4-gallon number 5 pots, a single pepper plant would be dropped in like that. Fill around it, press it in, the poblano is ready to go. And actually what I might do for some interest, and please subscribe, we'll see how this does. We're gonna put the sweet potato vine right here because that's gonna do all of its stuff underground. And then we're gonna just put the other poblano back here. Now, I have 2 plants in here. The sweet potato does get pretty large upper growth, so I'm going to have to keep these watered, but I think that will be interesting to see if I can utilize the bottom of the soil for the sweet potatoes and then the top of the growth for the pepper plant. I like how this space looks. I added in some more containers, and I still have plenty of room for the wheelbarrow for walking around. And I filled up another 10-gallon fabric pot. I want to put in just a single sweet potato. And again, quick dig, plenty of fertilizer, press it in. And I just want to see, how well does this develop by itself versus compared to growing with a pepper plant over there. I like doing different experiments. I was able to take a space that wasn't being used, add in 2 10s, a 20, and a 5-gallon container, and I'll be able to grow more produce. And it's not going to be that much more difficult for me to water because I have to come out here, water the tower anyway. So I'm always looking for ways to kind of manage my time. By putting these containers in a different part of my yard or something like that, I'd have to walk out and go and water them and feed them. But these are all contained right here in this space. All right, let's talk a little bit about trellising. For sweet potatoes, cucumbers, melons, you're gonna need some sort of trellising. This is a pretty sturdy tomato cage. It's like 10 years old. Don't ask me where I got it because I don't remember anymore. But I'm gonna use that for the sweet potato vine. Sweet potato vines will sprawl all over. And I just don't want them crawling way out here because this is a footpath where people are going to be walking. Don't really need anything for a pepper plant. You got to be careful when you're picking the pepper so that you don't damage the stems of the plant. And then a really wimpy tomato cage. That gauge wire is just not strong enough for tomato plants, but it's great for vining crops, and I will send that sweet potato vine right up there. This is where the cucumber might be, the cucamelon, which is more of a melon. Actually, cucumbers are melons. I'm using this A-frame trellis on the outside of the container. Sometimes we get stuck in our head thinking the trellis or the trellising has to go inside of the container. It can go on the outside, and the cucamelon vine will be climbing up and around this to start. And maybe I'll add some more depending on how big the vine gets. I really like how the space was improved by just adding in 4 containers. And again, I still have that walking path. Next thing I want to talk about is water-soluble fertilizer. And this is a sensitive subject for some reason because people think chemical fertilizers are like deadly poisons and they ruin everything. It's not true. Everything in the world is a chemical, including your organic fertilizers. In containers, you don't have the same soil life and environment like I do in my raised bed containers. So the organic granular that's in here is going to take longer to break down. There's not a lot of microbes. Microbes in the soil are what bacteria digest that organic granular, change it into a form of N, P, and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that the plants can use. I recommend in containers to go ahead and use the chemical fertilizers. They're not going to poison your plants. They don't hurt you. They're economical, but they're packed full of everything that your plants need. So at least one time for my containers, I hit them with the water-soluble, and that's what I'm going to do today. This is just Plant Expert. Use any one that you want. Just follow the instructions. Before I put in the water-soluble fertilizer, I want to water the plants, and I want to show you just how much water goes in there. How often you water? When the plants are small like this, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. When they're large and full size in the middle of the summer, maybe every day. So it's really going to vary. You want the soil to stay damp. You never want it to dry out completely. But just an idea, and this is where I put the seeds in, you want to really imagine the water just filling up the area and soaking all the way down to the bottom of the container. And that's going to be a lot of water. We'll let that sit. 10 gallon. It's going to look something like this. I mean, you can count. You don't have to be that exact with the watering. When in doubt, water more. People woefully underwater their gardens. Without water, the plants can't pull in nutrients. 5 gallon, 4 gallon, number 5 pot. Not quite as much. And I want to do this in real time so you can get a sense of how much water they're getting. And with 2 plants, like in this container, that's going to have to be watered much more frequently than the plant over there. And then I want to come back and give this a little bit more. It's fine if it's pooling on top. Your container mixes, your potting mixes will hold water differently. The water will run through it differently. We're going to let this water seep in, and then I'm going to hit it with the water-soluble fertilizer. I was going to actually start with the plant that I put seeds in, but I forgot. There's no point in really watering in your seeds with a water-soluble fertilizer. The seed coat itself provides nutrients. There's nutrients in the soil. About 10 days, 14 days after germination, go ahead and hit it with your first water-soluble fertilizer. You can use organic. I recommend AgroThrive. That's what I use predominantly in my garden. You can find the link in the video description. It's a great water-soluble organic fertilizer. In containers, because it's a different beast and there's a different, it just doesn't have the life that these beds have in it. Go ahead and use the water-soluble fertilizer. For something like this, whoops, it's a little full. I'm going to give it a good soaking. That's it. That's the chemical type. It's going to give it N, P, and K, magnesium, sulfur, calcium, micronutrients, all kinds of good stuff to get this plant off to a great start. You can continue with the water-soluble chemical types if you want. Again, great for a budget, not going to hurt the plants, not going to hurt the soil because you're growing in containers. Or you can switch over to your organic water-solubles, which I would again recommend AgroThrive or fish emulsion. You can see right there, that's a little, could be an aphid or something. So while I'm out here doing videos and when I'm weeding and tending, I'm starting to look for the insects because of mid-May here in Maryland, they're all gonna start showing up. For this guy, just a quick shot. And then same thing for over here. The plants here are set up really nicely with fertilizer now for a good 4 weeks. You don't have to do anything. You're gonna have to water 2 or 3 times a week while they're smaller. As they get bigger, maybe 3, 4, 5 times a week. It's really gonna vary. But you wanna soak it in, you wanna soak it through. And when in doubt, especially with these fabric pots, which I do sell again at my seed shop and they're a good price, you can't overwater. The water is just gonna seep out the bottom. So if you're in doubt, give them a little bit extra water. This is a great way to grow plants in a smaller space. The right size container will make all the difference and you're gonna have a lot of success. The final step is to mulch. Now you don't wanna mulch seeds. If we put seeds down here, we don't wanna put an inch of mulch on top of them because it's gonna keep the seeds from germinating and coming through. So you only do this for transplants. After your seedlings germinate, 10 days, 14 days later, go ahead and put the mulch down. And we left a good inch, 2.5 centimeters of space. And I like using shredded hardwood. And I'm just gonna put a good measure on there. That will help keep the moisture in. You don't have to go right around the plant. You can leave it, open right down in there. But using the mulch helps prevent evaporation. And then you're gonna have to water a lot less frequently. So let's just get that one set up. Same thing with the pepper plant. And you get the idea. But the mulch really does cut down on the frequency of watering, or it delays how long it takes for the water to evaporate out of there. Keeping the plants moist is key. It's one of the things I talk about on my channel, is that we woefully underwater, like I was saying. And the plants do okay, but we want our garden to thrive. So the more water you give them, the better off they are, believe it or not. You can't really overwater your plants in the earth or in containers that have drainage. Thanks so much for watching. So this is a section of my garden. My garden's a teaching garden. If you want to subscribe and follow me, I'll teach you how to grow food, have fun, save money. But this is one area where I'm doing a lot of containers, some of what I showed you in the beginning of the video. And then spinning over here, different kind of setup with metal raised beds with open bottoms. And this is where I dropped in the containers. Again, I added in the containers into a space that wasn't really being utilized. Plenty of foot space for the footpath, for bringing a wheelbarrow through. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. I sell the number 5s, the 10s, and the 20-gallon fabric pots. I also sell 50-gallon fabric pots. If you want to grow something bigger, you can grow all kinds of stuff in those. Some of my garden: beets, peppers, corn, more peppers in the sunken containers. I'll be doing a trellising video soon. I do that every year just so that you can grow vertically. Really saves space. It's a nice way to grow and it looks good when you walk through your garden. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.